Hello YouTube, Drake Clawfang here, doing the third and what I believe, unless I've forgotten any other topics, will be the final top 10 vid of my opinions on Final Fantasy characters. This of course is the top 10 villains list. Most Final Fantasy games, the villains usually steal the show, they're just so awesome. But of course some shine much better, some are just awesome characters in addition to being great villains, while others really set a new standard for evilness in their appearances. So, let's look at who's the best and who's the worst. Number 10 is Chaos, the Dissidia incarnation. The story for Dissidia and Duodecim are of mixed quality. The story isn't standout, but I don't think it's horrible, and it's not really told that well since we get chunks of it out of chronological order, and parts of the first game may or may not have been retconned by the prequel, it's not clear. But one of the best parts is what the developers did with the original villain of the series. They took the idea of Garland's alter ego and made him into a true god of discord, a demon bred to fight, and at the same time they also made him a tragic, complex, and memorable character. Part of what helps him is his amazing voice actor. Chaos doesn't appear that often, but whenever he does, Keith David gives weight to every word he says.
I was having a long dream. In the midst of disorder. It was ridiculous. Cosmos and I were governing the world together.
He's very powerful in battle, although I've got about 50 replays that suggest maybe he should have held on to his sanity a little longer. And he looks very cool, a direct interpretation of Amano's original artwork brought to life in glorious 3D. It's not as glamorous a title as God of Discord, or Lord of Destruction, or God in Fire, but Chaos can take his spot on number 10 on my list. Number 9 is Seymour. Once again, I like the evil counterpart idea, as TV tropes would call it. It's a bit tired and a classic idea, but it's tested and true. In this case, Seymour is one to Yuna, in all the worst ways. Like her, he hopes to free Spira from the cycle of death and rebirth. The problem is that Seymour's idea of freedom is approximately kill 'em all and yet you haven't sort 'em out. He thinks, in his own twisted way, that he's doing the right thing. He has no hope for a better world and sees no way out but to put everyone out of their misery. And he goes through that game with that little smirk on his face. He has Spira eating out of his hand and he knows it. True, his design is ridiculous, and his voice actor does not inspire as much terror as giggles.
Oh, my sincerest apologies.
But he's persistent, he's determined, and in his warped mind, slaughtering innocents is a perfectly moral thing to do. Better they die quickly at his hands than die slowly by Sin's hands. Seymour is just a bastard as many villains are, but he has enough charisma and success in his plans to be a serious threat in spite of the ridiculous wardrobe. Number 8 is Sephiroth. Yes, he's that low on the list. I could do an entire video ranting on how Sephiroth is not a very good villain to me. My main problem is that he doesn't do anything. He just leads the party on a wild goose chase around the world for no real reason until he gets bored, then he finally gets the black materia, summons Meteor, and goes back to doing nothing while he waits for it to show up. So why is he on the list? Well, after FF7 I got around to playing some other games that feature Sephiroth, and they universally make much better use of his character. Crisis Core took what I considered a very shallow and overrated villain and made him a developed character and a tragic monster. We got to know Sephiroth and he proves a much more interesting person as an ally than a villain. This made it much more impactful than the original game than to see his devotion to Shinra and his friends be betrayed and his world fall apart around him as all he thought he knew turns out to be a lie. His Dissidia incarnation is almost an extension of this, depicting him not as evil, merely self-interested. He has no concerns for the schemes of other villains and fights for his own cause, which is a perfectly valid one to pursue, regaining his lost memories and understanding the true nature of the war. And of course there's his infamous boss fights in Kingdom Hearts, even if non-canon, that are always awesome and memorable. So I don't think he's deserving as much attention as he gets, but thanks to spin-offs to supplement his character and battle skills, Sephiroth has been rescued from the scrappy heap for me. Number 7 is Gabranth. A lot of Final Fantasy XII deconstructs typical storytelling cliches and tropes, and Gabranth is another part of that. He's a deeper look at the idea of the evil twin, the hero having a wicked brother who betrayed him and joined the villains. When you examine the backstories of Gabranth and Bosch, it turns out Gabranth has proper reason to hate Bosch. As far as he's concerned, it was Bosch who betrayed him first, and he's not entirely wrong. He likely joined the Arcadians to save his own skin, and it's hinted, by my readings anyway, that Gabranth would see them conquer Ivalice out of personal spite for Bosch. For Bosch to watch as all that he stood for and tried to protect was destroyed would be the perfect comic justice for Gabranth to claim, because it's the same fate Bosch left him to when he left Landis. And ultimately we find out that beneath the helmet, Gabranth is a broken wreck of a man, with little to live for and no self-respect or pride because he knows it. He's also very badass in Dissidia, with a nice backstory that ties well into his character themes in Final Fantasy XII, and having a unique and fun battle gimmick that make him a complete and total badass. Judgment has been passed. Gabranth finishes this list at number 7. Number 5 is the Emperor. Final Fantasy II's story isn't going to blow away anyone remotely acquainted with the fantasy genre, but what makes the Emperor so memorable and gets him this ranking is a very simple and admirable work ethic. This guy does not fuck around. Throughout Final Fantasy II, anytime you think you've got an advantage on the Emperor, he comes out ahead and trumps you. Destroy the Dreadnought? He still got Hilda. Seek help from the Dragoons? Been there, killed that. Free Finn and get Ultima? Here's the Cyclone! Even killing him doesn't work. He just comes back to life stronger than ever and laughs at you for it. Twice! And in Dissidia, he's even worse, the mastermind of the game's plot and scheming to rule all existence once Chaos and Cosmos are out of the way. And he manipulates hero and villain alike to do it and almost succeeds. A powerful sorcerer, a cunning manipulator, and a remorseless conqueror, the Emperor takes every chance he gets to demonstrate there's a reason he's on the throne. And it's not because he likes the back support. Number 4 is a twofer, Vayne and Dr. Cid. They're perhaps the most well-written and developed villains in the series, each rivaled only by Golbez and one other villain. I rank them together because in different ways, they're both the primary antagonist of Final Fantasy XII. Well, that and really, I just didn't want FF12 to take up a third of the list, no matter how good its villains are. The two harbor benevolent ends, freeing Ivalice from the Arcaria who are controlling man's destiny from afar, but they resort to extreme measures to achieve it, namely conquering Ivalice so those the Arcaria favor are no longer in power. We don't see either of them all that much in Final Fantasy XII, and the party only comes into direct conflict with them near the end of the game, but their presence is felt throughout as Vayne makes political plays for power and Cid's Nethicite research becomes a major plot point. They both make strong presence in spite of their short screen time. Everyone is terrified of Vayne if he comes to power, building up the tension and dread of the war, and we see that their fears of him are justified. Cid meanwhile deconstructs the idea of the evil mad scientist. He's not evil and he's not insane, he's just fascinated by the subjects he studies and for good reason. Also helping make Cid make an impression, his voice actor is as hammy as a holiday dinner.
I'll be sure that it is!
And ultimately, both prove themselves truly good people at heart. Vayne cares for his brother and wants to protect him from the horrors of war, but Cid has never stopped caring for his son even when they're taking aim at each other. Three-dimensional, sympathetic, and commanding a presence the entire game world pays attention to, Vayne and Cid are about the craftiest pairs of schemers you could ever hope to find in the series. Number 3 is Bart Angelus. Some villains want to rule the world. Bart Angelus already does. One of my favorite exchanges in the game is this scene here, which sums up why he's such a good villain in 7 little words.
People are not yours to use!
What else does one do with tools?
Everyone in Cocoon exists to serve Bart Angelus' whims. Humanity prospers because he and the fal'Cie he commands have allowed them to. Throughout Final Fantasy XIII, almost everything that happens because Bart Angelus wills it to. Through Anima, he gets the pawns he needs for his plans, through Raines and Jill, he brings them together, and then he sets about trolling them like there's no tomorrow. Which is the point. He manipulates the party left and right using every tool he can to make them do what he wants. He uses force, he plays to their emotions, their sense of heroism, their gullibility, their friendship and family ties, and sometimes he just deliberately pisses them off and acts like a prick. Anything is fair game as long as it gets him the reaction he wants. And ultimately he succeeds. It doesn't work out the way he wants, but what Bart Angelus wants the party to do, they do it, because he manipulates events in such a way they have little choice otherwise. Always smug, always in control, and always letting us know it so he can laugh to us about it. Bart Angelus is a true chess master, and the party is nothing more than another set of his pawns. Number 2 is Kuja, the mentioned rival to Vayne and Sid for the best developed character among the villains, and in my opinion is only surpassed by Golbez, who, as I covered on the top 10 males, has outgrown the villain role, which is why he's not on this list. But for the record, if he was, Kuja and all those before would be bumped down a spot so Golbez could be number 2. Kuja, in all the right ways, is once again a villainous foil to Zidane. If you'll pardon the cliché idea, he puts on an air of grace and sophistication and focuses on looking beautiful on the outside to conceal how ugly he is on the inside. Kuja's masquerade as a poised aristocrat increasingly slips as the game progresses, gradually revealing the cruel, cunning, selfish monster within. But once again, Kuja is just one of those villains the player can feel sorry for even while stopping him. He has a Freudian need to assert his individuality and superiority to distance himself from the other genomes and give his own existence validity, and it's the revelation that his life is due to expire before he can leave his mark on the world that drives him off the deep end. At heart, Kuja is a selfish, entitled child playing at being an adult. If he doesn't get his way, he's gonna throw a temper tantrum and make life difficult for those he deems responsible. And it just so happens that this brat has huge source of magical power to use as he takes out his frustrations on the world. I won't go into detail because this section is already a bit long, but his character arc in Dissidia Duodecim is amazing. Good enough it could have been his own chapter, and it fits Kuja's character growth and personality at the end of his original game perfectly. He's also just a really fun, and really good, but very, very annoying character in battle. Nothing else to say. Like a great play, Kuja balances sympathy, tragedy, and villainy into a well-groomed package. And closing the list at number 1, no surprise, you knew it was him or Sephiroth before you even hit play. With Kefka, there's a couple reasons he's such a good villain, and they add up to making him a great one. First, he is a complete bastard. He's bloodthirsty, remorseless, and a mass murderer who will do anything to get more power and get rid of anything or anyone that stands in his way. Second, he's an antagonistic foil to Terra and Celes, embodying what Terra might become as she loses control of her powers and doesn't develop her emotional bonds with the party, and what Celes might have become if she hadn't betrayed the Empire and held on to her sense of morals. As I've said so many times already, I love that in fiction. It makes the villains seem more wicked and the heroes seem more virtuous when they're contrasted like that. The third reason Kefka is on the list is because, in a sense, he transcends his humanity within Final Fantasy VI's narrative, and I don't mean with all the power he gets. The themes of the game are the struggle between life and death, hope and despair. Kefka represents the nihilistic point of view. We live only to die, having made no lasting impact on the world, and life is full of pain and suffering, so why bother prolonging an existence not worth living? The party fights Kefka directly, as they also struggle internally with the beliefs he poses to them in the final battle, in a sense making him an evil foil to the entire party. But there's still a hint of tragedy in Kefka. Reading of his lines in Dissidia allows the interpretation he doesn't really believe hope and love are meaningless, his mind is just too insane and corroded to understand them. And from that, it's implied he destroys because nothing else brings joy to his life anymore. He sees people as living only to die because that's all he can understand about life now. And it once again ties perfectly into Final Fantasy VI. Kefka declaring that he'll destroy the very concepts of hope and love if that's what it takes to prove to the party that he's right. In an ironic paradox though, by devoting his life to trying to destroy those concepts, it's his life that has lost all meaning because he's trying to achieve the impossible. And so it's only suiting that when the party kills him and the world is put back the way it was, Kefka's legacy on the world vanishes, just as he claims the party's would. Kefka's character ties in perfectly into Final Fantasy VI's narrative, its characters, and its themes, and he still manages to be a funny, contemptuous, memorable, and effective villain. And so YouTube, this has been the third in my top 10 vids where I rank off my favorite Final Fantasy characters. I have no plans right in the future to continue producing original content like this. I admit I've sort of lost interest at this time, but I might do something a little further in the future, who knows. I have enjoyed doing these ones and hope you've enjoyed watching them. In the meantime, this is Drake Clawfang. Ciao and thanks for watching.